So for this session, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Baserow, which is a no-code database app, and it is provided by the Digital Circle Services team. It's hosted on green servers and available for teams who need a database tool but don't have the necessary expertise to hard code it themselves. It's a great tool. I'm going to show you what it can do, how easy and simple it is to use it, and also some of the main functionality features. This is not a free tool provided to Colab projects though, but it is reasonably priced at €100 per year if you want us to host it for your team. So when you first load Baserow, you can see already that I have already some groups set up here, and I already have some databases that are already there as well. So I'm going to start by showing you what you can do from the very basic to the more complex. And I'm going to create here a new database. As you can see already, you can start from scratch or import one from Airtable, which is in beta function right now. I'm going to call my database test at database. Okay, as you can see, the basic new database comes with 3 columns. That's name, notes, and active. I'm going to increase it here. And so I start my work by customizing this database as I want it. So let's assume I am a project that's collecting information about permaculture projects in the world. So the first and most important field is going to be project name. I can pick whether this is a single line of text, a longer text or whatever, but I think a single line of text for this is fine. And my default text is going to be your permaculture project name. And save it. This updates my fields. Okay, then I want to know if this project is active or not. I'm going to move this active toggle. You can see this is a Boolean. Click here, active Boolean. This means yes or no, depending on whether it's ticked or not. In this case, this serves me just fine. Then I want to add contact email. Change this to email. If I change the format to email, it will only accept email in this field, and therefore it will reduce the number of issues I'll have later if I have a not clean sheet, let's say, if I want to extract this list for my mailing list later. So contact email, and then we're going to do here project type. Let's say multiple select. I can add here some options. Eco village, community garden, permaculture, e-learning, permaculture school or academy. And you can add and remove them as you want. So if you think that permaculture e-learning is the same as permaculture school or academy, then you can simply just delete it. You can keep adding options as you want. So I'm going to create here. And by having multi-select, it means that whoever is filling this in can select more than one option at any one time. I want to move this here. Maybe I also want to add main activities. Also multi-select. And I can add some activities here, education, retreats, agriculture, and so on. You can keep adding. I'm just noticing that my laptop's a little slow, but it's usually quite fast to respond. Okay, so now I have some of the most important fields that I want, and I want to make this database not only a database which people have to manually input their information on this kind of grid-like structure. I want it to be in a form. So I'm going to click here the word grid. I'm going to click form, and this is going to be submit your project form, add the form. And here you can see that I can make this form look quite pretty. I can add a cover image, I can add a logo, I can add the title and description. And then here it says there's no fields yet. So this is because I can add the fields that I want from my fields here on the left. So let's say I want to add project name, I want to add active, contacts, project type, and main activities. I'm going to leave the notes as a field that I have for myself. So I can have a space where I can write my reflections about this project, whether it should be removed or checked or anything like this. If I notice that there's a field here missing, and maybe one that I hadn't thought about that I would like to add, then I can add it here. Add field, for example, I have project name and contact email, but it would be good to have a person that I know will respond to my email or that I have a relationship with throughout this project. So maybe project contacts name. And I change this from make a choice to single line text and create. And now I can add it to my form. If I see that the order in which the fields are being represented here is not right, I can move it. I can simply click on it and drag it to wherever you want. I'm gonna move this down. As you can see, it's click and drag and drop type situation. You also always make sure that you have a description for your field so that people know exactly what they need to be doing. So under main activities, you can write, please choose one or more activities done within your projects. And that will tell people basically that they can add more than one if they want to choose one, for example, like so. If it's the option isn't there, you can also allow them to create one. So for example, in this case, I create play and so on. The same here, you can add add the description, also add options, eco village, for example. These are the options I want to add, and it's active. You can add a description here. You can also decide that you decide that whether this is active or not. So you don't, if you don't want it here, you can also then remove it. And that gets rid of it and puts it back on the left-hand side here, and where you can see it's there. So that's something you could have. You could have here additional fields that are internal and fields that are external, and always make sure that you write proper descriptions. So now we have the form. I want to go back to my grid, and I'm going to check that all the fields are there. As you can see, the new fields will now appear also here at the end. I'm going to move that here. And if I scroll a little that way, I can make things a bit smaller so they can fit better. Okay. As you can see, there's no real skill to this. It's quite a matter of just deciding the design of your form and what the data you're going to collect into your database, and creating the fields and then the form subsequently. Let's say, for example, you don't only want to collect data, but you also want to share your database with an outside viewer. In this case, you go to shared view, create private shareable link, and only the people who click on this link, which is created right here, will only be able to view it. They will not be able to edit the entries. But it may be that you, for example, have a prompt saying that if you're embedding this within a website, for example, then you can say, if something's not correct, please contact us. And then people can contact you to edit or edit an entry or change something on the database. You can also restrict this with a password. So not only you can really restrict the access, even the view link with a password that's relevant to your community. The other interesting things here is something about the color is more of a pro version. We don't have this available right now. You can also add filters. So let's say, for example, I want to filter by active. So when active is selected, I only see those. And for these, I'm going to show you this example in a different database so that you can see one which already has entries in it. I'm going to go to my dashboard. And I'm going to go to our funding opportunities database. So this is a bit more of a complex database, but you can see here's a lot of entries. So really to be able to sort and filter is going to be very important for your viewers. So let's say, first of all, I'm going to go on the view that our, let's say, client is going to see. I'm just going to open that in a new. That's my shared view link. Super. So let's say I want to, as a user, filter by some sort of order here because there's really way too much information for me to sift through it and find what I need. So I'm going to click filter, add filter. I want to have a look here at the fields which I can filter by, and I want to filter by sector. And let's say I'm in regenerative agriculture, so that I'm going to filter by regenerative agriculture. I can also continue adding additional filters though. So let's say if the location is or has, let's say, does it have, contains, I don't see any there. Currently accepting applications. So these are important filters for me to be able to process. All that information is now reduced to 6 entries, which gives me a much clearer idea of what's really available for me right now. I can also scroll using the scroll bar at the bottom here to just see the complete information. Let's say I am interested in the second one over here, but I can't really read in the format that it is right now. So I want to be able to open it by clicking here, the little icon on the side. And here it gives me the whole information in a more presentable way. So I can see here how much is the funding amount, the link, which I can copy. So I can copy this and open it in a new window, and I can look directly at what the funder needs. So this is one example of a quite complex sheet. And you might say, okay, what's the difference between the first one that you showed me and the second one? There is quite a bit of difference, and I'll show you this here from the back end. So the first one did not have any links that are outside of the table, right? So all the information was on one grid and it didn't have any interconnected sheets. This database has an interconnected sheet for sectors. So if I click here on my second sheet, you will see that it will show me what sectors are there, the different sectors, and which funds, which grants available, and which funders offer grants in that sector. So, and that's a view I can see from the back end. This is especially useful for our funding grant specialist when they're trying to match grants with specific projects. And you can also, if we wanted to, we could also share this view here by creating a shareable link to view, just like we did before. And if I wanted to see information about a particular fund, I would just click on it and open it, and it will open in a nice view that I can see. So let's say I want to open this one, just the same way. And since I'm in the backend, as a database owner, I could add other things here that are not there before. I can also see a history of how this database entry has changed. And I can see any comments if we were enabled in the premium version, but it's not enabled in this case. The history is particularly important if you have multiple people working at the same time on the one database. Okay, so that's one level of complexity that is more than the initial database I showed you before. Now I'm going to show you an even more complex database, which really helps the digital circle to manage their clients. I'm going to show you this here. So in this case, the digital circle has decided that the status is the most important aspect of this database, and this is why their main let's say sorting by is by status. And here you can see that there's a number of things going on. So, and there's quite a lot of fields and different data points and different records. You can also see on the side that there's a lot of different databases that are interlinked to this one database that is at the main database, let's say. So let's, for the sake of argument, say we have a new client and we're about to sign an MOU with this new client. So I'm going to go to the very bottom and create a test client so you can see what that's like. So the first thing I want to do is decide whether we need to take action or not. That's my first field. I'm going to say the action is required because they're new, and so they need to sign the MOU, get the service started, and so on. For client name, I would just want to add the client name there. If I click the plus button, it will kick off my client list, which is the second table there. So if the client does not already exist, and I should search before starting one. So let's say it's not finding a client with this name, so I can add a client, Amy Fennec, add the client contact, add the address. The client contact is the name of the client. Sorry, that's me again. So client name, let's say if the organization is the organization of the client. In this case, I represent myself. So, but if this were an organization, that would be, for example, Finca Verde. Right? Contact email is going to be the mail of the client. As you can see, it already starts checking that my email address is correct in the correct format. And here are some notes that the digital circle services people will make about my case or my record or anything like this. And there's always a tick box button for being active. So then the next is an MOU record and an invoice. Now, it could be that at the moment, there's only talk of becoming a client and therefore there's no MOU. It also means maybe that there's an MOU, but there's no invoice yet. So it could be that these remain empty for the moment. However, if there was an MOU and I had already logged it in our MOU records database, then I could click it from here, choose it from here. If it's not there already, so let's say I want to search for the MOU. I'm gonna search for it using the client name. And it doesn't find it, right? So I can create it. I click on that. I start filling that in. The MOU reference number is very important because this is what interlinks between the MOU document with invoices. So let's say there's a reference number, the MOU itself are documented here. Safe and covered. So here's one MOU. The URL of where this MOU is saved, very important, so that we can always go back and reference that document. Any services that the client is linked to, so services that they will be using, and there's a number of these. And you can see here how the interlinking really works well in order to capture this complex data that is in different databases. So let's say it's this one. I also want to document when the MOU starts and ends so that we know that we need to renew the client and whether this is active or not. Also, we can click here invoices. So if I click on invoice and there isn't one yet, in the same way, I can just run a search on my client. If there are no invoices, then I can create an invoice. And this gives me invoice number. I choose the client from here. Right. Again, I have already an MOU reference, so it should come up here when I search it. Wasn't in this case. But if it had been there, it would be there. The invoice total. The currency is going to be automatically euro because our fiscal host is in euro, but it can be anything you want. And then I want to make sure I sent it to the client and when I got paid. So I want to be able to search through my invoices and see which ones were sent to the client and which ones were paid. When I'm finished, I would click create and that would create my import. And that's on the invoice, right? So I'm going to close it. So I'm going to show you a real life example of this by closing some of these down. So let's take this entry as an example. I'm going to open it, and these are all the information that's already there. So I can see the client name, what service we are using. The output is where this service is being delivered to, what is the cost, the renewal date, the service provider, who in the team is providing the service. And if I click here on the person's name, you see that it also opens a record for that person and all the contracts that they are linked with. This is particularly important for internally if you have a handover issue. Let's say, for example, Yuan goes on holiday and he says, Amy, I'm going on holiday for 6 months. Then I know that, okay, I need to pay attention to these contracts and see exactly what's going on and whether there are some that are coming up for renewal or I need to talk to a client. So it helps really manage, especially between self-organizing teams, who is doing what and who's responsible for what clients. And it could be that multiple people are responsible for any one client. So you can see here that some of these clients have 2 people responsible. If I click here on my name, you can also see some of the information here. So that's basically on our main spreadsheet. Now, let's say, for example, I have a query about a specific MOU. I'm going to click on my MOU records. And I'm going to see which MOU I want to access. So here it gives me the client's name, so who the MOU is with, and also an MOU reference number so that I can tell from our records where it is. Importantly, it gives me also a link to the document itself, so I can simply click on it and it will take me directly to that document. So this is a good example where we see the database bridging with a file or folder record. It also gives me start date, renewal, as we said before, and invoice numbers that are related to that MOU. And also in my notes, I can see, okay, not signed yet, what needs doing and so on, and whether action is required or not. So this is the same here for DC service team members. So this is where we manage our, let's say, internal HR resources. And we try to keep these records correct. So this is where you saw basically everything. And when there is a link to another spreadsheet, for example, in this case, DC services, for example, WordPress hosting, if I clicked on WordPress hosting, it shows me exactly what that service is about, who offers that service within our team, how much it costs, whether it's active, and so on. So if people have queries about accessing one of our services and one of our team needs that information quite quickly, then they can go to DC services and check out all the services that we have documented and how much they cost, the different rates of service, and who is offering within our team. So as you can see, this is quite a complex and very interlinked system, which differs from the slightly complex of the funding opportunities database and from very differently from the basic one database structure that we had before. Obviously, how complex or simple it is, it depends on really what you want to do. And this tool is particularly cool, in my view, because it allows you to have a customer-facing input, especially for projects who want their people and they want to engage with the public to collect data. It's cool because you can import it from an Airtable. So if you have Airtable format, you can import it there. And you can also export your tables as well if you don't want to use Baserow anymore and you want to move it somewhere else. I really like the way it interlinks as well, and this is an open source product, so it's really good to have an ethical option to a product like Airtable, which is not, and it's quite costly. This Baserow product is offered at €100 per year right now. We are doing this as an introductory offer, and we hope that we can continue offering the services at an affordable and easy to reach price for projects who need it.